I wanted to run to the toilet and throw up. And I was in decent shape at this point. I wanted to run to the toilet and throw up, but I couldn't because I couldn't move. I started getting cold shivers and sweats, like we at set 3. At set fucking 3.
One of the toughest workouts I've ever done. Probably from the systemic standpoint, the toughest workout I've done on this list. And it was a workout that was intended, when written, to be easy. And the power of a superset is if you've never had to learn the ability to be patient, you're not training hard enough.
Like, there's a photo of Arnie doing cable flies, and now they're arguing why cable flies is not optimal for pec hypertrophy. But way back then, what was Arnie doing? A ton of volume, a ton of consistency, a ton of intensity, like for decades. Like, if the depth circuit is just a huge lactate build-up, huge potential, muscular endurance benefits to it as well, and a massive growth hormone output. But all you're doing really is those 4 movements.
So I was inspired today I was having a conversation with a client, and we're talking about the most brutal workouts that I'd ever done. And in almost in a sense of like, tell him that you could train harder than you do. And he trains hard, but it's like, I'm trying to show him there's another gear by explaining some of like the horror stories, if you call them that. And I thought, like, now with, like the push to train smarter, which I'm all for, and all the talk of reps and reserve, that I do think we need to remind people that there's another gear in training, and maybe even just remind ourselves that there's another gear in training, because sometimes it's easy to forget it when you go through the motions. Open and honest question before we delve into the topic. Right now, over the last 12 months, let's say, do you think you train hard enough? For audio listeners, he's shaking his head.
Shaking my head with eyes glaring wide open, like, let's skip this conversation now. Not at all. Not at all. I can, not easily, that's the wrong word, but I do notice certain rep schemes where I talk myself out of when it gets a little bit tough, or maybe I take a little bit too long with the rest. And I can also hold my hand up and say that a mountain climb last year taught me a lot of lessons about, am I training hard enough, and where my physical limits currently lie. 100% no. To be fair, to find someone who trains on their own who can 100% say they do train hard enough, I don't know if that can ever truly be the case. I don't know. It would take very certain specific individuals, of which I don't know many.
Eddie Baruta,
to be fair, I never saw him train on his own. I saw him, I don't know, jet lagged to do a 100-kilo pendulum for like 12 reps, and that was all I needed to see.
I was talking to this client about Eddie as well, and I tell you what, for love or hate Eddie, I have a lot of respect for Eddie, and I think he carried himself in a way that he would want to be treated himself, and that lived from everything: the way he ate, the way he moved, the care he took to his training. Ever watch Eddie train? It was like a thing of beauty. It was like what I imagine people that really like art think when they look at a painting. Like, it was perfect. Every inch was perfect. And he always trained hard on his own. Like, always. And when I say his own, I don't know. Would he train as hard if he wasn't in his place of work where he ran the education and we're all still looking up to him for inspiration? Who knows? If that gym was empty, he may have not trained anywhere near as hard. But I'll tell you what, I would put money on that he does.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't want to get necessarily on top about Eddie, but this is basically the compliments of Eddie's part of the show, because he is I don't think there's anyone I've known that's trained as consistently hard without fail. And he's also the person, and I say this with no disrespect, he never got shredded for the photo shoots. He always looks amazing, but was never bone dry, right? He always sort of like, he's looked good, and he never really fluctuated over the course of the year. And because despite working in an aesthetic bodybuilding, body transformation gym, he didn't give a crap. He just wanted to train because he loved it.
Yeah.
And he is my example. Like, if you got anyone who you think comes close to that, who does? You said you don't know many. Who do you know that trains as close to consistently hard as you can think?
It's a tough one, because I don't want to blow smoke up too many people's asses either. And there'll be people who listen to this and going, hang on, I train hard and I train by myself. So I'm going to refrain from saying names. But I'm going to say...
I would say this though, to those people, right? If you're listening to this right now and going, hold on, I train hard, Rob. That to me says you don't. Because the people we're talking about probably don't think they train that hard.
No. What would be a key factor to show that you do is consistent progression as well. That's the difference. Did you train hard last year? Well, the answer lies in your training log, really, not necessarily in your sweat patches that you left on the floor or the swear words that are all over your Instagram video. And that's a topic for another day. We won't do that today. That's a big video I want to do on. I think we're scaring people off. I think the industry's come back to scaring people off. Because if you're rolling around at the end of your allegedly hard workout, just because you did a 15-minute finisher that's put a ton of lactate in your legs and you're rolling around on the floor crying, who's that actually attracting to buy into your services? No one, really. The mate, 20 stone overweight mate who can't get up the stairs without collapsing. Yeah, I'm sure that motivates him. I'm sure it does. So it's not a hard workout. And that's something we could talk about as well. What is the definition of a hard workout? But it has to be purpose to it, right? So if someone's training hard, anyone can train to the point where they throw up. Doesn't mean it's a hard, beneficial, safe, effective workout. Challenge workouts obviously are in a different breed of their own. They're not the sort of thing you would do long term. But in terms of working out, training hard, for that to be the case, there would be maybe not long term, but decent amount of progression over the previous year. And that's why I can say I did not train hard enough last year. Not enough progression on certain movements. I
think for me, if I was going to have a proper look over my training, I still have the ability to grind out a set. And I have ability to grind out a set more on upper body. I'll admit that as I get older. Like, I will push a press to failure.
Yeah.
But I am not consistent enough these days, with not only with training, as other priorities come into my life, but also with like my logbooks. Being ADHD means I've always struggled to keep a logbook. So I know I'm progressing, but I couldn't tell you this is the reps and sets on weight I did on this last month. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I limit, why I sort of certainly am limited. And I used to, when I first started training, I used to live for leg day. And it always used to be brutal. Like I used to deliberately take pride in how hard I could train legs, and I had like 26-inch quads at one point, but no upper body, by the way, no upper body. I was really weird trying to fit jeans that fit, wearing a small t-shirt and couldn't fit into any jeans. Very strange. Had no hamstrings though, none glutes, hamstrings, just quads. And then like now it's like almost flipped a little bit because I know now with other priorities in my life, I know how much that's going to take out of me.
Yeah,
and that puts me in a position of empathy. More empathy with my clients, because that's the problem. I think so. There's some clients who are just wimps and just don't want to train.
Yeah.
But I generally think some clients would happily train hard legs if all they did was train. Yeah. But if the thing that's most important to them is being good in the next meeting, putting money on the table, looking after their family, and they're just mentally, like, nervous system white. That's the thing that puts them off.
Oh, cool.
Not the actual extra rep on the pendulum squat.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's a relevant thing to think about as well. It's that progression's not just naturally going to happen. Like, you have to push for it. And obviously, yes, like you've said, with ADHD, it's tough to keep a logbook, and that's probably exactly why I've not been able to for years now, right? But I always have that kind of memory of what I can do, like, and sometimes I can surprise myself. So last year, if I were to really, really think about it, last year I pressed X amount on certain machines, X amount on the Smith machine, didn't really touch the barbell for a press. And if I did any dumbbells, I didn't go anywhere near 40, nowhere near 40. But yet yesterday, I'm like, let's just grab the 40s. And up they went for like 8 reps for 2 rounds. So why have I got that reserve strength to be able to do that if I've not really pushed toward? Because at the very least, I was consistent with my training. And I didn't get weaker. I just kind of maintained last year. But if I'm maintaining, I'm not training hard enough. I'm not training hard enough.
I think we're in different echo chambers, because you mentioned that you think the industry is coming around to a point where people are training hard and looking to just sort of show how much testicular fortitude. I wouldn't even say they're training hard.
I wouldn't even say they're training hard. But
yes, I think the opposite. I think the last few years we have gone too far down the reps in reserve bandwagon. And and again, I have a real love-hate. I've got a video. I'm trying to hack the algorithm because I'm not. I don't think I'm an unfunny human being, but I think I can have a good laugh and make good comments on like a podcast show. But I can't be deliberately funny. Like I can't create a script to be funny. And I've got a video that I think I've created a script, and it is pretty funny. So I'm waiting for a time where I think it's actually going to get some eyes on it and not like get it and then rethink this is really good and put it up and it gets 1 like and no one sees it. It gets 30 views, that sort of shit, right? So I'm just trying to find the right time, and I think it's 1 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
Hong Kong time,
Yeah.
because that's when people are obviously scrolling Instagram back where you are.
Cool.
But the problem with Reps and Reserve, one of the biggest people who have put. Obviously, it's not his thing, but one of the biggest people that popularized Reps and Reserve to a lot of people in the industry now is Mike Israetel, right? And I like Mike Israetel, especially now he's finally put his money where his mouth is and got himself in actual shape, right? So like, because I always, not that I didn't trust him before, but I was like, I've never seen a result, and I've never seen any proof on his body other than he's big, right? He definitely built some muscle,
yeah.
But like now, complete game. Relations periodization has been banging out results as well. Like a lot of respect for Mike, but he trains a lot of his beginner client is an intermediate trainer.
Yeah, sure.
So their ability to know where 1 rep in reserve is different, and that's fine. But then when we're seeing trainers who train Mary from Slough and her 2 children, and they're going, you've got to be 1 rep in reserve from failure. I'm like, you don't know where 1 rep in reserve is. Or you've got the guy like me when I was 21, that my 5 reps in reserve was wriggling around like a fish on dry land.
Yeah. Again, it becomes that. It's almost like a sort of a very, very small, shiny object syndrome again. Even though it's such a simple concept, but it's not. It's a simple concept, but it's not an easy thing to decipher. I couldn't always tell you if I've 100% got that reps in reserve amount correct. Can't tell you. And even then, that can change. That can change on a given day for multiple reasons. So,
have you ever done NKT?
NKT.
So it's muscle testing.
Okay.
And this is interesting. Like now, this won't quite be the same when you're under load, right? But the problem with NKT will go like they'll put your arm up and they'll test they'll push this way and see how strong your lats are, right? Now, what the problem with NKT is that if you tell somebody you test the lats and they're rock solid, and you go think about the time when a close family member died, or think about the most stressful moment in your life, and then the next moment, nothing, no strength. So it's interesting to see with those things that how much you can change on a certain day. Your emotional state can change how close you could be to failure on a certain lift. This is also why I think the logbook's important, and part of the reason why maybe my ADHD doesn't want to take it, because I know that if I've had 1 hour's sleep, it's not going to be the same. If I am dehydrated, it's not going to be the same. The amount of food I have, not going to be the same. And all these things affect what something can be on a given day. Like, it's knowing where proximity to failure is, I think, is probably your most important tool.
Yeah.
To some extent over the weight you lift, because you can always get a proximity to failure, even if that load isn't necessarily going up, as long as it's not consistently going down. Like knowing roughly where you are, so the trends are going up, like a body weight scale, is probably where most people should probably look at it.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's a risky one, because this is what I do think everyone, at the very least, at some point in their physical career, shall we say, should invest in a coach, even if it's just for a couple of sessions, right? Just so, and you go there with that purpose. Everyone thinks, right, I'll hire a personal trainer so I can learn the technique, right? Well, not every personal trainer knows actually the technique. But to be able just to have someone there to help you test what your limits are, or what your potential limits are at that moment in time, is worth its weight in gold. Because then you've just added one of the most important tools to your tool chest, rather than just learning the correct technique, right? Because obviously the closer we get to that failure, technique changes slightly, right? So that's something I would definitely consider if you've not done it before. If we're talking about reps in reserve and failure, and you're really not sure what that feels like, apart from you stop when muscles start burning for a couple of reps, then that's something I would definitely go and do. I would definitely try and Get into that because it's just it's a powerful educational tool. Really, really is. And if you've only ever trained on your own, I don't think you've ever really experienced it, unless again you're of a certain type of mindset that not everyone's in, because we try and shy away from pain. And if something,
we're not all David Goggins.
Exactly. And something hurts, we stop. So you will do that in the gym as well. Of course you will. And in terms of it, in like intensifiers, that's what I was going to say. I used to always give my clients drop sets years back, but even before UP days, I loved them. I was like, this is so great. This is killing them. This is destroying them. Until I heard Phil, whether it was Phil Learning or whether it was Phil Gray or someone, it was a Phil. It was definitely a Phil. And Phil said the drops, like it just completely.
Phil Graham, I would go for to talk business hypertrophy, but I wouldn't go for. I wouldn't go. Mate, I wouldn't go to him to talk anti-aging.
As soon as
Sorry, Phil. Sorry, Phil. I love Phil Graham, but my God, he is my age. He is my age.
But I just heard it in an Irish accent in my head for some reason. So maybe it wasn't Irish. Someone else.
But probably Phil Graham knows how to build tissue, man. Like we look at him as the business guy now, but he owned Rock Pit Fitness, and that was a serious bodybuilding gym back in the day.
Yeah, but it was on the concept of drop sets that you get to the end, you've hit failure, and then you take it down to the next set of dumbbells or a 20% drop, whatever it is, and you've got more reps there. Of course you have. But he says, like, where is the point you actually reach failure there? Because you can then take it down to 10 kilo dumbbells and 6 kilo dumbbells and 1 kilo, and you'll still have more reps in there. So do you ever really truly reach failure through them? And that's why after that, I became a much bigger fan of rest pause than I ever did of drop sets, because then you've got a battle on your hand. There's no.
That's even more important for girls, right? I remember we did a team training once where we were doing lateral raises and we were surfing the rack, right? Starting like way too heavy and just going down. And like guys tend to fatigue. For anyone who doesn't know this, obviously we do, but like guys tend to fatigue quite linearly. So like if I get 10 on a certain weight, I'll probably get 8 on the weight below, and I'll get 6 on the weight below. And eventually, even with a set of arms, I'm not moving, right? Yeah. But then we did it with Emily Anger. Shout out to Emily. And when she got to the 2s, we just gave up.
Yeah. Pointless.
Because girls can handle it. Girls can handle it much more for whatever reason. There's lots of theories of why that is. Probably muscle mass differences. Yeah. But although she is a strong woman. But yeah, like I absolutely agree. Like I always assume that there's more in the tank. And I'm going to go back to your point about getting a personal trainer, because I reckon that a lot of personal trainers watch this or listen to this, and if you're one of those, ask yourself the question, have I ever had a personal training session? Because we can see it, we can be told how to do it, but are you really just winging this? Because for years, I did PT with never having a PT session before. I saw what others do and tried to emulate it, but I'd never been in one.
Yeah.
I'd never known. And you wouldn't do this in any other job, right? You wouldn't have a bungee jumping instructor. I'd never done a bungee. You just saw people jump off with a tie and go, oh, I mean, I could tie a knot and, I could give them a push. Yeah. Like you wouldn't do it. And but so many PTs don't. And I think there's longer lasting effects in the same way as like, when people take LSD for the first time, the world just seems brighter for the next few days and things seem calmer. It's like, if a personal training session or a big challenge, horrible, brutal, I can't recover from it, borderline stupid workout like we'll talk about later, even though that might not be immediately effective now, I argue the PT session will be, but the hard workout might not be. If it takes me to here, and for audio listeners, this is me separating my hands very far apart, and the left hand is where you are right now in terms of your training, you will probably train somewhere in the middle of that when you go back to yourself, because there's an extra gear. So even if there's 50% more, you're now going to train 20% more than you do on your own. And then over time, that starts to dissipate. Then you do another one of those workouts with a friend, and then you go back up again, and then you kind of come back. And every time you do it, you just add a bit more to your solo training arsenal.
It's exactly it. You can't... any PTs might want to argue that saying, well, they've trained with mates. That's not a PT session. And that they did it on their level 3 course. That's not teaching you how to be a personal trainer. It's not. Teach it. It's not churning out personal trainers. It's churning out scripted memory machines. It's essentially what you're doing. You learn enough to pass the multiple choice test, I'm not completely knocking it, and I'm not saying everyone who does that is a terrible personal trainer, not in the size, but there is a percentage. But it teaches you how to retain facts. It's basically continued education, and then you are put through what is essentially a scripted workout, because you've already been told this is how you put them into a lat pull down, and you check every 20 seconds how they're feeling, and you show them the RPE piece of paper whilst they're doing the fucking exercise.
You missed out your 15-minute warm-up on the treadmill where you chat to them about the weekend.
Treadmill, Jesus Christ. Doing the assessments was the worst part of that job. Because the people who are going to be good trainers, you're sitting there watching them going, this is too basic for them. This is a waste of everyone's time because they're good enough. And the ones who were terrible, you're like, they're never getting into this industry. And unfortunately, some eventually do. Or some fail.
Well, the problem is they all get into the industry, exactly. But they don't last.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I think there's so much. I think there's so much merit in a good actual PT session. And you're right. Training with mates is not a PT session. It's like dieting with your partner at the same time, right? It's like It's like me coaching Ellie. Now, in the same way that she might not listen to me, I'll also, if I want a pizza, I can justify giving her a refeed. And in the same way that mate pushing you hard, everyone here likes to say they train hard, right? But deep down, when you're training with your mate and you're about to step in on that leg press and push him a few reps later, in the back of your head, there's a voice you've got to fight that says, if I do this, he's going to do the same thing to me on my next set.
Yeah.
When you're doing a PT session, you're in charge and there's no receipt. Yeah. Which is it's a cop-out, 100%, but it changes the dynamic.
Yeah. I had this poor geezer. I had this geezer training next to me in the gym I train out at home. Nice enough guy. Body's all right, he's young. One of those that, makes it out that he's training a hell of a lot harder than he actually is through the noise and the fake jelly legs afterwards and things like that. But he's in decent enough shape, right? And he grabbed me. He was doing a drop set on the leg extension. He said a triple drop set. And he said he was going for 12 reps on the first round. So I'm stood there. He gets to his 12 and then stops, takes the weight out. And I'm like, could have gone more there. Like, he could have gone further or he could have gone heavier. So on the next one, I'm like, right, let's push him now. Let's push him. This is my round now. I'm in charge now. And he got to like the 8th rep, stopped. And I was like, no, I'm going, like, keep coming. And he's like, no, that's it. Like, he already had a pre-planned triple drop set of 12, 8, something. And the problem is when you've got full control of the variables like that, you're almost in the comfort zone, in a way, really. So having someone else take that control, well, now you've got nothing to do. And I've got a great example of a tough workout, which we'll talk about in a bit. One where those variables are almost completely taken away from you, then you know if you're working hard or not, because all you can focus on is that present thing. You can't count down. Like if I'd said keep going, you're going until I say stop. He doesn't know when that point is. He might feel when that point's coming, but from our perspective as well, if we can see no, there's more in here, which is why again reps in reserve really is more of an external thing for someone else to tell you than you yourself. Really,
100%. And it's interesting, like for a message for any personal training clients that listen to this show on a regular basis. And obviously, Andrew, we're looking at you because you're going to be listening. Although actually, I think I reckon he's not one of these people. I mean, I don't know what he's like in a session, but if he's as tough as the rest of him seems, then I don't think he's this person. But I will. Go on.
He's had a couple of one-to-ones with me when he's come over to London. And we've done rest pause on Prime kit, so he knows what failure.
And he doesn't give up, right? I bet he still goes.
Doesn't give up.
Yeah, so I'll shout out one of mine because I don't think you should mind me saying this. Maria, you will be watching this, right? And I love you to bits, but you do this, and I think this is a message for personal training clients here, right? With regards to that thing, listen to what the story that Rob just told about the leg extension. If you are the trainer, if you are the client that's moaning that their trainer got the number wrong, you're not focusing enough on the set. It's a great thing that Christian Thibodeau taught me. And he said, a personal trainer shouldn't be able to count. because he's too concerned about thinking about what's going on the foot, your knee, your hip, your ankle, your spine, your ability to brace, the speed of the rep. Like the number is the least important thing on his to-do list. And when a client says, "Oh, sorry, that's not right. I did 2 more than you're saying," it's like, I don't care. And if you're the person saying that, you're absolutely not training hard. So like, let's if we can give a bit of a criteria to people, like a little bit of a tick list to say, here's the things you need to know or things you need to consider when you're saying, like, to say if you're training hard as you think you are. I'll start with one because it reminded me of what you were saying. Remind me of this. If your sets always end on an even number, you're likely not training hard enough.
Yeah.
Because that means you're always probably finishing on the set number.
Yeah.
I finish on the 8. I finish on the 12. So you're saying you're so pristine that you always finish exact. You always get the rate right. Bullshit. If you're training hard enough, your reps will sometimes fail at 9 and 11 and 13 because your body doesn't go, "Oh, I don't like odd numbers." It will fail when it fails.
100%. Yeah, and Joe, I had a client that used to always. He was great. He would never count the reps. We'd count the reps, but he'd never stop on a certain number unless we were getting to the point where he's like finishing on rep 13. And because he was superstitious, he didn't want to finish rep 13. So we'd always get an extra rep out of him, even if
he always did more. He never stopped at 12. It was 14.
So it was terrible, really, because that 13th rep was like, I shouldn't be allowing this. This is terrible. But just to get him through it, so he didn't have to finish on 13.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Like, amazing. Have you got something you would say to your tick list of like? Go on.
For me, it's still relevant, but in the slightly opposite end of the spectrum as well. If you're really training hard, which means focused as well, you'd be timing your rest periods, and you're not. And I'm not. I'll hold my hand up.
I'm not. I am. When the year picks up and I've got these new courses that I'm building, hint for people that want to do more education stuff, and when the more clients come back from China and I've got a bit more disposable income, one of the investments I will make is to sign up to a gym that's not my work.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I am so guilty of doing work that I need to do, like the little stuff, in my rest periods, which ends up me delaying my rest periods dramatically. And like awful. Watching YouTube videos, terrible.
What I want to,
I'll justify it. I'll justify it because I go, I remember when Adam Cole came back in AEW, and I remember that pop, and that'll fire me up.
Yeah.
So I'll watch that, and it will fire me up to watch another video.
Exactly. My issue is because I use Spotify on my phone, and I'll play random playlists or I'll play things I haven't listened to for a long while, and then I'll go, hang on, wasn't the bassist in this band also in another band? Didn't he have a stint in Anthrax for a bit? What was the album Anthrax did in 1992? And then before you know it, I'm on this rabbit hole, and I'm, oh shit, yeah. So I want to go back to, I haven't got one. I want to get an MP3 player so I can leave my phone in my bag or at home, so I can still listen to my music without the opportunity to distract myself like that. Because that's where everyone's rest periods gets fucked up. Distractions by our phones or other people.
Yeah. My next on the to-do list would be, and it's kind of 2 for the price of 1. So it's just one's kind of a follow-up. Rep speed is more important than reps in reserve.
Yeah.
So if your reps are never slowing down, you are not training hard enough.
Sure.
And my follow-up from that is if you've never had to learn the ability to be patient, you're not training hard enough. There was a great term that I learned from, shout out to Matt Millis, who is, I think, still the manager of UP St. Paul's. I think. He wasn't the kind of person that was leaving, so I think he's probably still there. And he always said there's a term called successful failure, which I teach everybody now. It's like there's that point where you're always going to fail, people that don't know, on the concentric first, right? So knowing that you're going to do more on eccentric and you're going to do more on an ISO, you should be able to hold it for a while, and you'll be surprised how many you would actually slowly finish the rep. It should stop and it should grind, and you have to be patient. And it's really easier said than done. Like, because again, as you said, people don't, when things hurt, they stop. That's our body is telling us to do this. We are fighting that response. But we need to have that ability of being able to kind of like sit with it, get used to it, and be patient and successfully fail those reps and just like grind out those reps. And if every rep doesn't do that, you're not close enough to failure. And to build muscle, we have to be within 5 reps of failure. And I just don't think anyone's getting close, because like from 4 reps from failure onwards, it will slow down for sure.
This is a common thing. Failure then becomes a bit of a buzzword, and you'll see people do it, whether it's filmed or whether it's not filmed, doing their, let's say it's their leg press, and failure to them is when they've stopped. When they have that split second, they try to push it forward and they can't, so they stop, and then they're like, failure. But it's not, especially not if you've been resting at any moment during that movement as well. Like we can talk about tempo counts. I don't know many tempo counts at the top of a leg press where you hold it for 5 seconds, take a few breaths, straighten your legs out, slap them, and then go for another rep. That's not part of getting to failure. That's resting. That's taking a rest mid-set, which is allowing you to get that extra rep. But yeah, the people that will go down for that next rep, they get 2 split seconds into the concentric, it gets tough. Not that they can't push it, gets tough, and they stop, and then suddenly that's failure to them. That's not, as we know, that's not even close. It's a real, true muscular failure in that movement. Not even close.
Well, that's an interesting one. Have you got something? Because that's made me think of I've got another 2. Have you got anything that springs to mind?
Go on.
So that technical failure is valid, but should not be confused with muscular failure.
Yeah.
And so what I'm meaning by the point there is that absolutely, I'm not saying you should take everything to muscular failure. Far from it. When you're doing, I always think there are 2 different kinds of lifts. There are skill-based lifts and output-based lifts. So a skill-based lift, an example, that would be a deadlift or a back squat. An output-based lift would be like a hack squat or a leg curl or a machine hip thrust, right? So on those skill-based lifts, you want to go to technical failure. You're not going to go to muscular failure on a deadlift. Like not safe, dumb idea, don't do it. Although I'm sure both of us have. But stupid idea. But like people often go, yeah, well, I went 5 reps from failure. I'm like, no, you didn't. You went within 5 reps of technical failure on the squat, which is fine, but that ain't what the failure point we need to hit for your quads to grow. Yeah. So get on a hack squat and actually then use that accessory work to take it. So a squat is fine in that program and it's good to base, but you need to have something, if your goal is to build muscle, that's going to take you closer. And I think people confuse technical failure. Go, oh yeah, it's fine. I went close to failure. Yeah, nah. Your reps haven't properly slowed down. You haven't gone to muscular failure. You need to get closer to that. Yeah. And you need to maybe choose exercise that are more conducive to you doing that.
Exactly.
So sometimes people think squats are harder. Yeah. And I think sometimes this is where squats are the get out of jail free card. This is your cop out because you've got an excuse not to train as hard.
True. I was doing step ups just Monday, right? Heavy step ups. Now that is way more technical failure than it's ever going to be muscular failure, because there's so much going on, and there's moments where you are like gravity's pushing down on 80% of your body weight, and you've got the leg on. This is not muscular failure. So I'm getting towards the end of my set. Like I didn't even have a rep plan. I just went for it. I was trying to do as many reps as I could with 2 20-kilo kettlebells in each hand, which was not a good idea. And I'm like struggling to step up, but that was technical failure. Was there any shake, burn in my muscles? Nothing whatsoever. If I dropped the weight, could I have kept going a little bit? Yeah, of course I could have. But even if I had just done body weight, I think there comes a point where it's technical rather than muscular. And there's certain movements, and this is why machines are phenomenal. And I can't believe there's still PTs out there giving shit to machines. I can't believe it. So uneducated.
Or systemic failure. Right, which is another thing, right? So, and again, this is where the old SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demands, have to come in. Because what failure are we talking about here? Because how many lifts we hit systemic failure, but our quads haven't failed it, and like how many people need to do more conditioning or need to do a period of higher rep work, like I hate the term metabolic phase because people think it means fat loss, but like a higher rep sort of phase, for use of better, a strength endurance phase, let's say, to get to the point where your ability not to get gassed is the limiting factor, because you're not close to. Yes, you hit failure, but you've not hit failure to get the quads to grow because you can't get that far because your conditioning is so poor.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and that's not me calling people out. Like right now, I am probably in that camp. And I also feel that sometimes the reason why people don't get to failure is because the stuff that's the limiting factor when it comes to getting to failure is often the stuff that people don't want to do, right? Like if my problem may well be, if you put me on because we haven't got a really good stable back machine squat in the gym. We've got a leverage squat, like the Watson leverage, which you can take closer to failure, but you can't take to failure because you can still get squashed at the bottom.
Right.
Whereas if I had a pendulum, I can sit down, right? We're getting one's coming, one's on a tanker from Watson coming to us soon. But like, if I get to a point where my heart rate is the thing giving away from my quads, the biggest barrier there, it should be a no-brainer. Cool, I do more conditioning, I go into a higher rep work phase, and I come back to it. But also, I don't like that stuff. Yeah. So mentally, that's the thing I'm not going to do, which automatically will limit my progress. But that's me hating that style of training.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's, again, like I keep saying, we'll talk about this, but when we get into the workouts bit, there is that element of, was it a tough workout because I didn't have the full capacity or physical capability to do that particular style of workout based on my previous styles of training. So yes, systemic failure is a real thing as well. Like if you're absolutely gassed because you've got zero aerobic base and you've been holding your breath for several fucking reps, well, there's no oxygen going to those muscles that are crying out for it. So that's another type of failure to consider, which is why sometimes it's worth getting a fucking personal trainer who can count your reps.
Yeah. Have you got any more of your, like, of a to-do list of your our ultimate guide to failure before we move on to the workouts?
Not so much for failure, but it's, apart from the fact that even if you choose not to have that your sole focus for training, it's still worth knowing exactly what that is.
Where it is.
I think it's like a passage type thing.
I that brings me on to my last one then. It's like, if you're not sure about any of this, do a challenge set.
Yeah.
So like, this is a really good thing that's I don't know, like, it wasn't me who started doing these. I think it might have been a Sean Murphy thing, but it might have been someone else taught to him. But let's say you did 3 times 8 to 10, right? And you go to first set, you go 1 rep in the tank. Second set, you do 1 rep in the tank. Third rep, you go as many as you can and test if that was actually 1 rep in the tank. And what you'll probably find, there's another 5, 6, 7 in the tank. So then you up the weight next week. And eventually, if you're not sure, that gap between what you thought was 1 and what actually is 1 will get smaller until you're close-ish. And then and only then do I think is when you can actually start using reps in reserve. Like, test yourself enough over a few weeks.
Yeah.
And trainers are going to be here going, well, I did that a long time ago. I'm sure you did, but it's good to come back to.
Yes.
In the same way that you tracked your calories in your first diet, doesn't mean your portion size eyeball is exactly the same now. Yeah. People get complacent, people forget. So like, if you haven't done that in 4 or 5 years, do a phase where you take everything to failure. Do a Mike Mensa style DC training, like a high intensity bodybuilding phase, all on machines, and just see where your limits are. I haven't done one of them in a while.
Yeah, it's true. I saw a great post the other day of someone. It was just a simple tweet saying all these girls, or guys as well, that claim they're doing the world's toughest glute workouts, but are still walking out of the gym. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be crawling out of the gym for it to have been a tough, worthwhile workout. But there is something in that as well, building up a bit of a burn during some exercises, whether that is reaching failure or not. But then again, if you can do like 20 different exercises in one workout for one body part, are you ever really working hard on any single one of them? Probably not. 20 is a bit of an exaggeration, but even above a handful for one body part is still it's just junk volume as well. Are you putting junk volume?
Can you call it the world's hardest glute workout if it ends in cable kickbacks? I'm going to apologise for this to my colleague Karen, who has recently got on the Mr. Olympia stage, the first woman from Hong Kong to do so, by the way. Huge fucking monstrous, like, Karen, if you listen to this, by the way, you're a fucking weapon and super inspired by this woman. But I'm not a big fan of the glute kickback. But she works in the other ways, man. I can never doubt that woman's work ethic. But she's the exception. She's the unicorn in a pack of horses. She's the snow in the Sahara.
And it's knowing exactly what as well, right? There's a big push from the ultra biomechanics crowd at the moment. Like even they now try and debunk some of what Arnie was doing. Like there's a photo of Arnie doing cable flies, and now they're arguing why cable flies is not optimal for pec hypertrophy. But way back then, what was Arnie doing? A ton of volume, a ton of consistency, a ton of intensity, like for decades, right? So for people to then come along and go, well, cable flies, stop doing cable flies. It's not good. Here's what you should do instead. Yes, in some realm that kind of makes sense. But in another realm, do we ever really know what exercises are actually building that particular body part on that particular person? And I use this girl who trains at my gym for an example, who I believe is a competitor, phenomenal shape and strong as fuck. She's the reason I don't go on the hip thrust machine in my gym anymore, because it's embarrassing to go on there if she asks to jump in on a set and then the top weight you've been doing becomes her warm-up and you're like, oh, I just want to kill myself. She's incredible, right? But there are movements that I question that she does. For example, the double leg Smith machine glute kickback. For me,
I'll just apologise to Karen on Robb's behalf here.
For me, I'm like, I also see her do hip extensions. I also see her do IDLs. I see her do very heavy.
That's just a reverse hyper. That's all that is.
A very, very small range of motion. Like if you can really imagine this, it's a very short range of motion reverse hyper. But yes, reverse hyper. So then I'll see her on like heavy cable. Yeah, not kickback. She's literally got it tied around just above her knee, right, bottom of the hamstring, and they're heavy. And form's great, and she's working hard. So I was just thinking the other day, what are the exercises that are actually responding for her? I could go over and say, you might as well chuck that glute kickback out because it's not doing fuck all for you. But maybe it is. Maybe it's the cable one she needs to chuck. I don't know. I'm not her trainer. I'm not her coach. I don't have enough of her background or history to say. But there is too much of a push, definitely, to say, well, you shouldn't be doing this or I shouldn't be doing this one. But again, in terms of what actually is the junk volume in your program, how do we ever really find out what that is? Like, genuine question, how do we ever really find out what that is?
It's hard, right? Because it's really multifactorial. Because what you've got to think about here, and what is the goal of the exercise? Because there is a reason for everything. So the multifactorial argument first, right? So we take this girl here. Now, what's allowed her to have that physique? Is it that exercise specifically? Is it the heavy stuff that she does in the other part of the workouts? Is it her genetics? Is it her nutrition? Is it like there's all these factors in here? Like I was speaking to Karen the other day about she's got a new coach to try and take her Olympia for next year to the next level because she's taking it super seriously. She's going to do this as an absolute career. She's unbelievable. And we got the program back, and her boyfriend is the owner of the gym.
Right.
And we were going through this workout, and it's like, Karen went, "You'll hate this workout." And it's shit. She didn't even give her the exercises. She just said patterns, pick from this list. So she was going to James and went, well, should I do this? Should I do this? Yeah. But the advantage of this coach is that she knows the judges of the Olympia. She's had experience with getting people on stage. She knows how to peak people. Like, coaches aren't necessarily going to be experts at everything. If I'm producing a coach, if I've got a gut issue, I'm choosing a coach who's going to be more experienced at that. He might not necessarily know how to improve my overhead range. Yeah. And if I went to, and I'm not criticizing for sake of argument Jordan Shallow's nutrition knowledge, but Jordan Shallow will probably get me stronger and more mobile than many people in this industry. But he might not be the person that solves an autoimmune condition I might have had. So there's a lot of factors in this. And it also depends what you want it for. I want to go back to your fly argument. So they were saying that flies are optimal. Do we need cable flies? Well, when you look at a cable fly, you can line it up with the fibers you want more perfectly than any dumbbell press, right? You can, maybe it's a bit harder to be stable. So maybe if it's seated, and the only argument I say maybe it's because you can limit that load is less than a dumbbell press. so the low capabilities will minimize mechanical tension. That's the only argument I ever had. But like, if your goal's there to make that the metabolic stress part of your workout, that could be perfectly fine. And it's like the same argument. People going, mechanical tension is all that matters. Yeah, yes, it's the most important thing, but I think it's misguided to say it's the only thing. It doesn't mean muscle damage and metabolic stress are irrelevant, and it means you can't get one without the other. It's like calories and gut health, right? Like it's I don't know. I'm not taking cable flies at my workout.
It's a trick. I'll send you the post. We could talk about this another day. I'll find the post because it's a few weeks old now. I'll find the post and send it to you. But I get it, but it's talking in absolutes as well. It's talking in absolutes. So, and obviously we can't do that. We can't do that in the industry. Everyone there's too much else.
Everyone does so,
but absolutely everyone does. I think we try not to. Do you know what? I can't think of any absolutes that we double down on. Really, someone might say
calorie deficit,
calorie deficit and failure. You fucks, do it.
Yeah. Although as well, like here's another reason why you might not be training as hard as you think you are. You're dehydrated in a chronic calorie deficit because you don't want to lose your abs.
You don't fucking sleep either. God damn it.
Yeah. I'm really guilty of that. So like going into the crux of this, let's go into let's share the lessons we have learned from some of our hardest workouts. Do you want to start? We'll do like we do with our top five. So you do a workout and I'll talk about a workout. So we were just saying that we're going to go into your hardest workout. And it's obviously such a hard workout we're going to talk about that we literally went to technical failure live on the stream and I was booted out the chat. So we're back on the air now. Tell me a little bit about your first hard workout.
So what we'll do, which I've tried to say 3 times now and Riverside keeps going, nope. Whilst we do these, we'll try and talk about the criteria of what made it the toughest workouts, because any fool can write out a metabolic circuit of 20 squats with 100 kilos on the bar, straightener, overhead press straightener, a mile sprint, fucking all this stuff. Does make it it's a challenge, right? But for it to be a tough workout, it should have had purpose to it. So if we can figure out what the purpose was as well, that would stop people just going, oh, I'll give that a go. And that's what we saw with the 300 workout, which we're going to cover. I'm not saying it's the toughest workout. However, one of my first ones is from Jim Jones. It was my first baptism into the Jim Jones world. And it was a workout called Tailpipe. Now, essentially what you do, it's a partner-based workout. You can do it on your own. It's a little bit tougher too. One of you rows, full pace, 250 meters. Flat out, 250 meters. Whilst your partner is rack holding 2 24-kilogram kettlebells. And you do 3 rounds. So if you're the first to row, you row 250 meters fast as you can. You then grab those kettlebells and you stand in a rack hold whilst your partner is rowing their 250 meters, which may be faster than you, might be slower than you. Then you're straight back down for your second row. Then rinse and repeat for 3 rounds. My lungs have never hurt more in my life, to the point where I actually went a little bit delirious. And in my panic, all I wanted to do was get out of the gym. I ran. Well, I wobbled over to the fire exit, fell out of the fire exit onto the floor where I couldn't stand up, but it wasn't fresh air because it was the vent for the swimming pool that we had. So it was just chlorine pumping in my fucking and then eventually I climbed up the stairs and cried. That was a real eye opener into a tough workout. And then we tried it a few times at that gym. And then when I went on the Jim Jones seminar, we did it on there and they gave us some pointers that I thought was going to make it easier, but it didn't. It made it even tougher. And I got to find out the reason why you're doing that workout. And it became popular since, and I saw everyone doing it wrong. I saw everyone finding their cheat, their loophole. So when you stand with 2 24-kilogram kettlebells in a rack position, your elbows are into your side. That 48 kilograms of weight is bearing down on your chest. How are you going to breathe? when you've just done a 250 meters flat out sprint on a rower. So what do I see everyone do? They lift their elbows up and they walk around and they're trying to distract themselves and do all these different things to get more air into their system. You're just meant to stand there, keep that weight on your chest, wait while your partner is hammering himself on the rower. And the whole point of that is to teach yourself almost abdominal breathing. You can't shallow breathe. You can't lift your lung. You can't lift your rib cage up. It's 48 kilos pushing down. So you've got to learn to breathe deeper and slower and more controlled than you ever have done in any other rest period where you're normally going. And it was a game changer from then on. It became a lot tougher. And they also taught us not to really go flat out with your row, because you want to try and hit 3 250-meter rows at the same maximal pace. And if you go 110% in row 1, row 3's shit. Row 3, you're almost cheating because you've slowed down because you've got nothing left. So you almost save a little bit in the tank. It was clever, man. It's really clever, but fuck me. Yeah, that gave me some PTSD for a little while afterwards, I'll tell you.
I hate workouts like that because you not only leave like hating your legs, but you also hate your friend.
Yeah.
Because like if he's slow, he's like, I hate you. Hurry up.
On the seminar, the geezer I was with stopped. Now, I didn't have to say a thing because you had 7 foot, 200 kilogram shredded Rob McDonald ex-UFC fighter towering over him with the stopwatch. Because on the seminar, they didn't let us look at the clock. He was watching it all. It was amazing. So I had him shouting at him for me. I didn't have to say a word, but you're in the dread that fills you instantly. Well, I'm not going to put these kettlebells down. And he stopped. I'm going to be standing there a hell of a lot fucking longer. Played with your mind as well. And that's what I like. I like workouts that play with your head a little bit as well. And they're tough. They're tough to create. Not everyone can do those. I don't think I can really do that. They're tough. But yeah. That was
my first one. I'm going to talk about a workout that, which one am I going to go for first? Okay, I'm going to talk about this one. So I'm going to talk about a workout that it became the toughest workout, one of the toughest workouts I've ever done. Probably from the systemic standpoint, the toughest workout I've done on this list. And it was a workout that was intended, when written, to be easy. And the power of a superset and choosing the right superset makes an average workout brutal. So I was on my junior year, and this is back at the time of your junior year. You were, you weren't paid massive, and so we worked through Christmas, and it was me and Akash Vakela, and we're like, should we just do a quick workout to sort of tie us up between Christmas and New Year and just kind of get back into it after a few days off? I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. So what we're going to do? Okay, let's do something we can do quickly. So let's do a full body workout, like a death circuit, 4 exercises, and we'll do, like, say, 3 to 5 rounds. Okay. So what we decided to do was Nordic curls on the glute ham raise into ring push-ups, and then this was the fatal mistake that me and Akash made. We decided to do Bulgarian split squats, right leg, into single arm row, left arm. Bulgarian split squats, left leg, into single arm row, right arm. And that blood shunt from upper, so it lower to upper, to lower, to upper, to lower, to upper, was horrendous. And I did not want to lose. I didn't want to be the one that tapped out before he did. So we got to round 3, and as in round 3, I looked up at Akash, and I saw him just sort of do that little sign when you're trying to stop with, you're doing that cut by the neck, and I was like, thank God. It was horrible. And it was amazing because it actually wasn't. Of all the workouts on this list, on paper, it's the most simple. And it was just the power of a well thought out superset, even if it was unintentional.
Yeah.
And looking back now, like posterior oblique sling, it goes with that as well. It's a really good superset, and we stumbled upon it by accident.
And you put it, as people should know, that you put it on your social media the other day, showing people how to do it. So you've got a visual representation. It is one I want to try, because now I'm going into this phase of doing a lot more unilateral work to try and fix some imbalances and to prepare for something I'm doing later in the year. That's on my list. That's on my agenda.
That'd be a really good superset for you, because if you're
Yeah.
doing sort of like hiking, mountain climbing things, you're going to be using that posterior oblique sling. You're going to be using glute, opposing lat, and then you're also going to need a damn massive amount of conditioning.
And there's the purpose. There's the purpose right there. Why I should put that, well, not exclusively and do it all the time, but why that should feature in my programming at some point for those exact reasons. Now suddenly you've got a tough workout that has merit and purpose to it and reasoning to do it. Where there's so many, what I would never want anyone to do, because if we say 5 each, that's 10 workouts. I would never want someone to just go, right, I'm going to try all 10, and away I go. And then I've experienced the 10 toughest workouts those two guys said. There's no benefit to that. There's no benefit to that at all. But there might be one or two that's worth chucking in. You never know.
If anyone does that, if anyone goes, I want to try these workouts that we're putting together, if you live in London or you live in Hong Kong, don't try them. Hire us to take you through them. By 10 PT sessions. And then you can say you graduated and done it. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, damn right. Next up. Yeah, I've got 5 today. What I will do with this one, just because it was sheer volume at weights that I would not normally be doing that volume at, a Poliquin-inspired depth circuit that became part of my initiation. So it was, if I remember correctly, body weight on the bench for 15, body weight pull-ups for 15.
And I've done this one.
The squat weight was above body weight. It might have all been body weight, but I think deadlift was 1.5 body weight.
Yes, everything was body weight. Deadlift was 1.5 body weight.
And then you've got the sled, which I think was 1.5, and the prowler, which I think was 1.5 as well.
Yeah, it's kept the same. Kept the same.
And it's 15 reps on everything, including the 30-meter track, sled pull, and a 30-meter track prowler push. And that exposed me hard.
For people who don't know, like, obviously everyone gets why this is hard, but people are forgetting the extra, like, sort of crinkle to this. Is that not only was this against the clock, so you could pick your strategy of which order you do these in, but when I was against the clock, but you are putting a leaderboard for every personal trainer in the company. So, every personal trainer in your gym, because they did do a global one, but obviously Mayfair had a bigger track than City, so you only did one length, because we did 2 on both. So we can never. So, like, did you have it harder? Did we have it harder? You could make an argument either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the kicker. It wasn't just the workout. It was like every time you stopped, you're sitting there and going, I might be further down the leaderboard than this person.
Yeah.
So you pushed further than you had any right to really push.
And it taught me a lot. Like I say, exposed me in front of everyone. So coming up to it, I was panicking. Now I hadn't completely quit, but up until that point, I wasn't far out of stopping my Olympic lifting. So I had strength in my legs. So I thought, well, a trap bar deadlift at 1.5 times body weight, I'll be able to bounce through that. The squat, I thought I should be able to get 15 in 1, which I believe I did. The deadlift, I might have split up. I think I tried to be tactical as well, which was stupid. Didn't make it any easier. But I was panicking about pull-ups, because pull-ups was something I'd never been good at. So for a good week, I was practicing. I was like doing grease in the groove, style training, all that stuff. I thought, my God, that's where I'm going to fail. That's what's going to kill me. And as soon as the clock went go, I was like, right, pull-ups my toughest one. I'll get those first. And I flew through my first 12 reps, like flew through them. And I was like, how the hell am I doing this? And the guys are cheering, like taking the piss as well. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna blitz through this. I like, so straight onto the squat. Cool. Squat done in 1. Straight onto the deadlift. And I can see guys looking like, man, he's going to destroy this. Like, you could see in their face. And then some of them said afterwards, I got to the bench and then had completely forgot I've never been good at bench press. So, 5 reps in and it stopped and it would not fucking move. So I think I went back to complete the rest of the deadlifts, back on the bench and got like 1 or 2 reps. And now I'm like, I'm in trouble here. And so they're like, you know, they're helping out. They say, go do the sled, go do the prowler, 1 or 2. go do one of those. But I'm getting more and more knackered, and then going back to a movement I'm already struggling with. I think my last 5 presses were all done in separate rounds, separate reps, with big rest in between. So I couldn't do it, and then I was done. And then my time was over, and I was like, that was terrible. That was absolutely embarrassing. My time was shocking. Still beat some people. I wasn't the worst by far. Still beat some people. But I always wanted to kind of go back to it when my bench got better. But at the same time, I was like, why? Don't need to.
My time wasn't good, but I was robbed. And I'll tell you why. Like my time, I'm not saying I would have taken the lead if I hadn't had this happen. No way, shape, or form. But the deadlift did in one, the chin-ups I probably almost did in one, the squat I did in one, but it was hard. But the bench, I did it in a couple, right? And I rack it, and it was 15. I absolutely promise you it was 15. And Nick Daniel, he's the guy that robbed me, by the way. Shout out to Nick. We do the reps. He goes, 15. Cool. So I put it down. And now I start doing the sled. No one says a word. Why I did the sled before the prowler, I have no idea. That's a very silly thing. But then I went and did the prowler, and I was gassed here by this point. I was struggling, and my prowler was slow. And I got to the end of the prowler, and I passed out and just landed on the floor and rolled going, oh, thank God that's done. And then Nick Daniel went, you've got one more bench press. And I went, you what? And of course, because everyone's now cheering on, people thought I was done and now go, yeah, Simon's got one more bench press. I'm like, you son of a bitch. No, you don't. And if I did have one more bench press, you would have told me about that as soon as I'd sat up from the bench press. Simon, get back down, you got one more. Yeah. But you did it after the prowler. So it took me ages to get the last rep on the bench press, and that completely trashed my time. But it was horrendous.
And for those who aren't too sure, a def circuit is, yes, 4 movements. So if you're doing a full def circuit, a proper def circuit, you wouldn't have those track stuff on the end. But def circuits, you can modify. You can modify for whatever purpose you need, right?
Another post you can go and see on my Instagram.
Oh yeah, you did def circuit one, of course. See, there you go. Si's providing all the stuff for you. Why aren't you guys listening to it? Come on, sort yourselves out. So yeah, the idea of the def circuit is just a huge lactate build-up, huge potential, muscular endurance benefits to it as well, and a massive growth hormone output. But all you're doing really is those 4 movements, but it's heavy weight. It's not,
go on.
It's 10 to 12 rep range weight, not something you would do for 20, 10 to 12, and you're doing 10 to 12 for multiple rounds.
I'm going to put 2 workouts in my because I can't split them, and they're both very, very similar, and they'll both shout out people, and we like shouting out people in the show. We're good, right? We like spreading the love. In my number 4, and it's interesting because you won't expect this to be in here, because believe me, we've already established that I'm tougher than Rob, because that workout he talks about isn't in my top 5. And we've both done it. Just saying. But I did. When I was doing my second UP photo shoot prep, and probably the best shape I've ever been in was a guy called Ant from a gym called Shapeshifters. He did my prep. One of the best experiences I've had working with somebody. Fantastic. And I'm not, and again, not to discredit any other coach that I've worked with. Callum, Blake have been amazing, but it was the reason why Ant was probably the best coach I ever had is because he ran the business. And he ran the supplement company, and he didn't take clients on anymore. He kind of did it as a favor, and because he knew that I would just how many times, run into that wall, how many times, and no helmet, sir, go. So he did it as a favor. So it means he was ringing me every night. We were talking business. It was brilliant. But I went back to Birmingham to buy some subs and to see mum and dad, and I went and did an arm workout with him, and we did a pointer flexion arm workout. I've also done a pointer flexion arm workout at Body Development in Bath with Tom Kernington. And for people that don't know Tom Kernington, Tom, he doesn't look like a personal trainer. He looks like a small, and he won't to my own sense, I think. I hope not, because he is tougher than me. A small, round guy from Bath, right? Doesn't look in great shape. But he is so clever. Before UP did their own education, people used to go and do the Body Development mentorships and learn from Tom. And Tom is a boxing coach mainly more than anything else, but just incredible coach. And he also did a point of flexion arm workout with me. And both of them were so amazingly hard, both from a muscular fatigue standpoint, but also a metabolic standpoint, where I'm like, I'm gassed and I've trained buys and tries. And it made me, it was the thing, this, and talking about the purpose of this, what this taught me is that the way you plan a workout, like people will think an arm workout will be easy. You can make anything difficult. In Ant's workout, it was about the execution. He didn't let me phone in a single repetition. Tom Kernington also didn't, but he also included bigger things like dips and chins within the bicep part of that equation. So it was like an arm workout, or sort of like a full body workout. Those two things, I think, my hat's off to those two coaches. They are exceptionally good. And it really taught me how much you can get out of something so small. That's a sip of thought.
That's it. And again, the execute, you would think, well, it can't be. If someone wanted to create their own tough arm workout, they're instantly going to go for volume. They can do 10 different 10 different variations on a bicep curl, which they don't really need to. 10 different variations of tricep exercises. But the execution, the intent, and the intensity behind it is what makes that tough.
Yeah. On my 28th birthday, I did an arm workout with Andy Farquharson. Another shout out to Andy, who's now the manager at City. And Ellie was on holiday, and I had nothing to do, so I came into work. I had no clients, but I just wanted to come in and see people. And I said to Andy, we're going to do a workout. And it's my 28th birthday, so we're going to do 28 sets of buys and 28 sets of tries. And like tons of sets. It was so much volume, like silly. But the best bit about that, at the end, I had such a great pump because it ended with some occluded sets as well. And I took a photo with Umar, and it's the only photo I've looked bigger than Umar. I had such a pump, and I just out-angled him so well that it was unbelievable. What's your next one?
So I'm going to go slightly left field, which is also related to one of the toughest ones I've ever done. So this one, timed sprints, okay? Mm-hmm. But not on a treadmill. I'm talking exclusively on an athletic track with someone else holding the stopwatch. And the idea is you would do, say, 4 rounds of 30-second sprint, 30-second recovery, followed by 4 rounds of 20-second sprint, 20-second recovery, followed by 10 seconds, 4 rounds of 10 seconds, 10-second recovery, and then pyramid back up to your 30 seconds, right? For an example. But the difference with time sprints out on a track where you have to go as fast as you can and your coach is screaming at you to keep going faster and to not slow down, and you have no concept of time apart from maybe where you might be on the track at that given moment in time, knowing your times, your records for that particular distance. It's a mindfuck, and it's a lung killer, and it's a leg killer, and it's high in lactate, and it really helps you build a bit of resolve in there as well. But the tricky bit gets too, because you're not doing 10 100-meter sprints, you're doing 10 20-second sprints. At the end of that sprint, you've ended up somewhere on the track. So eventually you lose all sense of time and awareness of where you would be on the track at any given time, because suddenly you're not starting on a rate. You might be starting on the 33-meter mark or something like that. And not knowing what that not knowing how long that clock's got left on it. Once you then get there, all you've got to do is focus on fast, focus, aggression, drive. It almost takes you into this flow state where all you can think about is your technique and your speed. You can't possibly think of anything else because you haven't got those variables to worry about. And my fucking God, actual timed sprints. This is why I disagree with Cut, and we'll talk about this in my number one. This is why I disagree with a lot of people's idea of tough Metcon workouts on cardio machines. It's not the same. Get yourself out on something where you have to propel yourself forward, where there's no rest. There's no rest in a sprint. There's no moment from start to finish where you're resting. On a cardio machine, yeah, there kind of is. Mate, that one was, yeah. I used to dread those when it came to that time of the season. Dread that.
I'm going to give. I know I'm sort of cheating in these last couple by putting sort of multiple experiences in one, but I'm going to tell you about a few ones that I would consider parts of workouts that have been brutal, rather than entire workouts. And I'm going to finish with a couple of workouts, and I'm going to finish after that with a bonus one that is just silly and difficult for an entirely different reason. That will make you laugh a lot. But this one, the parts of the workout section that I found tough. So bits of workouts that were really tough. So the first two are counter to your I don't believe that workouts are really hard if you want a bit of Metcon equipment. Because I think if you do Metcon equipment right and the right piece of equipment, it's brutal. The first one is occluded Wingate sprints.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this. I never got the opportunity to do it, but yeah.
So for those who don't know what occlusion training is, occlusion training was designed to help people who, for whatever reasons, injuries, muscular wasting diseases, like chemotherapy, things like this, people had muscles that atrophied, but their joints, because of this, they couldn't handle load. Because we know, mechanical tension is the biggest driver, but if your joints can handle it, your joints can handle it. So they provide more metabolic stress to that muscle to allow them to grow back without having to lift quite as heavy. So for people that say mechanical tension is the only thing necessary, talk about the occlusion, right? So you'll and it only works on limbs, right? You're not going to occlude the chest because that's how you need blood to go to the heart. But you'll put an occlusion strap either around the arm, normally done here, or around the top of the leg and on the limbs, so blood will come into those muscles, and then they will pull and create a lot of cell swelling because they can't get out. So you want it to be tight, but not so tight that you go blue. And most people will do these normally on like either arms or like leg extensions or leg curls. But me and Nick Daniel again, another person, you can tell that Nick Daniel likes to train hard, right? Did occluded Wingate sprints at different times. He did it first, and I was like, I'm going to give this a go. And it was horrendous. The burn was, I've never known anything like it. The second one was a Nick Daniel written workout when he made me and JP do energy systems training. And we did 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off, 50 seconds on, 50 seconds on, 40 seconds on, 40 seconds off, 30, 30, 20, 20, 10, 10 on a dead mill. And we did this every week for probably about 10 weeks. We got very fit at the end of it, but we were out of it every single time. That was really brutal. And the third part of the workout was my I knew this was coming, and I was hoping I'd get away with it, but I didn't. My last ever pendulum squat set at UP City. When I was going to Hong Kong on my last day, they got me. They got me good, and it was unbelievable. And it was made worse by a guy called Dara, I think still works there. I made him do one on his first week, and I've never known Bambi on Ice like it. The video is hilarious. And I think he was his chance of getting his own back. And my God, did he. And that was one set. And what that taught me in terms of the purpose is knowing that in whatever realm, you can always get more out of the least. And when you look at Dorian Yates, we look at Mike Mentor-style bodybuilding, we look at all these stuff, but rather than like doing a hard workout, it's great and it pushes your boundaries, but how much carryover does it have to every other training session? That reminded me of like, every time I go into a set, I can get more out of this set. Yeah. And those are the things I think are incredible.
That's the thing to remember is what is the actual carryover? And this is the problem I have with people chucking 10 to 20 minute Metcons at the end of their workouts, whether it's themselves as a personal trainer or for their clients as well. There's much less carryover to that than you actually realize. You might even be better off doing giving your clients some sort of aerobic zone work than this 20-minute Metcon thing. Because realistically, you've already done the lactate and the endurance and the lactate and the like the muscular endurance type stuff in that workout anyway. And now really all you're doing is pushing them into the zone 2 heart rate where there's not going to be much carryover for their overall fat loss, their general fitness, etc., unless you just weren't working them hard in the first half of their workout.
And coaches always say this is for enjoyment, right? They go, oh yeah, but I want to give them an experience and they want to enjoy. I'm like, I've never, ever, 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 ever had a client go, hey, sorry, can we skip bicep curls today? Because I just really want to make sure I get time for prowler.
Yeah.
Never.
There's a lot of misunderstanding around this word capacity. which essentially is either strength, speed, or power endurance. The ability to keep going with that heavier weight, or whatever the hell it is you're choosing to do. There's a lot of misunderstanding behind it. People are doing these capacity finishers, prowler, farmer's carries, things like that. What capacity is that giving you? Like, if you grab those exact same kettlebells and take them for a mile walk, now we're talking capacity. That's going to have carryover to other things. Your 20-second walk up and down the 15-meter.
Are you saying the Liver King was onto something?
Liver King has occasional merit.
that workout, it was the Barbarian.
Wow,
that sounds amazing. Like, hard, but this sounds like a workout that actually has merit.
If you think about that, that's going to turn you into a beast. It's going to turn you into an absolute beast without ever needing to eat raw liver or ancestral supplementation,
or 15,000 grams worth, 15 grams worth of steroids a month,
or 10 different types of growth hormone. Who knew?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost a misunderstanding. You're doing the type of exercises that would increase this capacity, but you're not doing it for anywhere near enough time or distance that's going to create any sort of adaptation whatsoever. So in which case, you might as well chuck an extra set on your regular workouts, on your regular exercises in your workout, really. Like, actual capacity work comes from pushing yourself for a decent amount of time with that weight. And a couple of laps of a 15-minute track with 20-kilo dumbbells, going slow as well, is not, and then straight into a fucking airdyne or a ski erg is not capacity work. It's not fun capacity work.
I think Prowler.
Go.
Yeah, I think Prowler is a non-eccentric way to train the quads if you want to minimize muscle damage.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. There's your real purpose. That's your real purpose behind it. So yeah, bit of a misunderstanding there. Thought I'd clear that up for any PTs that might be listening.
Love it. What's your number 4?
So this one was maybe not my last. It's funny you said pendulum. Maybe not my last pendulum workout. I was going to give you another Jim Jones one that absolutely killed me. But the problem with that killing me is because I did not have that capacity at that time. When I went to that seminar, I had 0 aerobic base, like 0. I hadn't sprinted for a long, long time. I was deep into my Olympic lifting. I didn't bother with any sort of steps or cardio, and I was eating McDonald's twice a day. I was not in the best shape for that type of workout. So, of course, it killed me. Like it would kill a complete beginner, etc. But I do also remember the last leg workout, which was so simple, which was a superset of the pendulum with 60 kilos on there. And we were going for like 10 to 12 reps, which I could do at the time. I don't think I could do 10 on 60 right now. But I'm getting there. Followed by the lying leg curl. And the lying leg curl was like above 12 reps, right? It was almost like failure each set. And within like 3 rounds, and we were doing 5 of them, within 3 rounds, all the energy drained from my system, like someone had just sucked out all the carbs. I wanted to run to the toilet and throw up. And I was in decent shape at this point. I wanted to run to the toilet and throw up, but I couldn't because I couldn't move. I started getting cold shivers and sweats, like we at set 3. At set fucking 3. So when I finally crawled to the toilet, and then I came back thinking, well, maybe, it could be a bug, could have caught something as well. Like 20 minutes later, I was fine. I was ready to go. I wanted to go again and finish off the rest of the workout. It was so weird. So I think it was just a combination of the right weight, someone pushing me through the right execution of the lying leg curl and the pendulum, that it was just an immense amount of lactate build-up in the legs that translated into shakiness across my entire body.
I think some of those workouts are actually like deep, like the actual hardest workouts, because as you said, there's so much. The time and the place of when you did this workout matters. Like, you were a member of UP when they used to do every Friday. We all train legs as a team every Friday, and once a month it was fancy dress. So we did a superhero one where I was doing pendulum squats in an Incredible Hulk onesie, and it got too hot and I had to take it off. We did a charity shop one where people put stuff in a charity shop, put it in a box, and people had to pick something out. And Eddie ended up in a crop top. But like, a lot of those workouts were tough. They were always written by Eddie, right? And we've established at the start that he trains hard. But I was so well conditioned at the time. Like, I wasn't necessarily strong, but I was so well conditioned because I was at 5% body fat for 2 years straight without fail for a long time. And I did a lot of conditioning work. I was doing a lot of hard leg workouts every single week, twice a week. So I was like, a lot of these are probably so much more like if I did them again with the amount of load I can lift and the much inferior conditioning in comparison. So I think it's some of those things. It's like the worst workout is situation dependent.
Sure. That kind of feeds nicely into my final one, but yeah, I agree with that. Situation dependent.
My two are the ones I've deliberately left till last. They are the most brutal workouts I've done, and both of them are a bit silly. So I will finish with I will start of my final two with the one probably everybody that knows me is expecting me to say at number one, but it's not quite the toughest, and that is the UP first ever hypertrophy leg day. It's where I met, like you know how like war brings people together. Like this is the closest I felt to that experience. And that sounds silly. Of course, it's not like war, but think about it. People here that I still speak to: Tarek, JP, Matt Millis. Oh my God! Obviously, this is obviously the one I speak to the least, but I can't remember his name. Josh McHale, right? All these guys, and there's more, by the way, that's in this, that all did that day. Like, it brought people together for years after the event. But for people, and I cannot remember all of them now to save my life, but it was a 10 exercise giant set on quads. So there was, if I remember correctly, it was called the Thor workout because they made Jay Wallace do it and they put it on YouTube. Right? So everyone wants to go and watch Jay, who I think, as hard as his workout was putting it on a bit, because I've seen Jay train very hard and he's not that theatrical.
I think there was more to that workout than what's on that video, because that video almost makes it look like he's on it's one set or something like that, and I believe it was like 10th or something like that. I don't know.
We did 4 rounds.
Yeah, I think Jay did more. I think. Don't quote me on that.
Wouldn't surprise me. But there was, and everyone started at a different period, right? So we had back squat, front squat, hack squat, in that weird hack squat that's almost sort of like a hip flex position from Atlantis. Pendulum squat, leg extension, sissy squat, walking lunges.
I want to say there was a trap
leg press, trap bar, heels elevated trap bar squat.
Yeah.
And clearly, these were the 9 they chose. And they clearly ran out of ideas. So they tried to do a loaded sissy squat, where you're holding onto a rope on the cable and you come down into a sissy squat. Now, the beauty of hindsight, that's a face pull with a sissy squat. No extra load on the quads whatsoever, just way less stability. It was literally Justin McGuire holding people up whilst they were doing it. But let's just say that was the bad exercise. 9. And I think there was, we did a few years later, we did a 12 exercise one because Justin wanted to beat it and he added reverse sled and prowler. And we think that'd be harder. But actually it wasn't, because you can do a good acting job on the prowler by picking your speed to make it seem like you're working on your arm. That was almost a respite in a way.
Yeah.
But like that was so brutal, because the sissy squat, they made you do it in the dip, the Atlantis parallel bar dip. So you come down to the bottom of the sissy squat and they got you to push your legs out like an isometric against the sides of the thing. I woke up with bruises down the side of my quads. It was brutal. But like, again, I do think me doing that was part of the reason why I got the job there. I do think another workout that's not made this list but was horrible when I was put a weight out. I left a weight out on my interview, and David Lancaster and the team decided to destroy me on conditioning. Helped me get the job, and it pushed me out the comfort zone. And would I be here without that workout? Probably not. So it was an important one for me, I think.
That's again, it's like another rite of passage workout. If you think about it, that's cool.
Yeah, my last one is also a rite of passage. But let's hear yours.
So what is this? Number one. So
this is your last one, right?
In terms of what it did, in terms of the purpose behind it, spot on. In terms of what it did to me, in terms of its simplicity, genius. In terms of what it will do to you mentally, and in terms of what you have to put in with work ethic, because the whole point of it is to create a specific adaptation, very specific adaptation. And so it'd be so easy to just coast through this and go, oh, that was a tough workout. Yeah, I'm blowing bits. It's, again, another sprint workout. And this is where I question anyone who does these 20-minute Metcons and rolls around on the floor afterwards and hashtag beast mode and all this stuff. You have not got a clue. Again, you're out on the track. You do 10 400-meter sprints. Now, that's version 1. 10 400-meter sprints with a 2-minute recovery. That is enough to destroy every muscle in your legs and your lungs and your balls and your brain. But there is another version called split 400s, where you do the exact same thing, 10 400-meter sprints, 2-minute recovery in between. But what you're doing is you're doing your first 300 meters at 85%. Now, not everyone's going to be able to do this, because unless you've got a background in sprinting, knowing what your 100%, your 90%, your 85%, your 70% is, you're not really going to know. And so what people will do is they'll do what they think is their 85% when it's really like 50%. So it's 85% on that first 300 meters, and then your last 100 meters is 100%, is 100%, with
I've done that.
Less recovery in between. This was a minute recovery in between.
Oh,
so to save yourself from dying, you walk round to the next bit. You don't sit there. You don't lie down. You don't bend over.
You cramp up.
You have to.
Blood will pool. No.
That is whenever someone has ever said to me, "What's the toughest workout I could ever do?" That for me, find an athletic track in your local area. This is what we're going to go.
This is this reminds me, and this. You know what? If I thought about this earlier, this may have made my list. But it reminds me of pre-season when I played rugby, and it wasn't necessarily a specific thing they did in that, but it was just the whole accumulating thing. So we did, like, we started off with you know the setup of a rugby pitch, what the lines are, right? So you go start the try line, you'll sprint to the 22 and back, you'll sprint to the 10 and back, you'll sprint to the half and back, the far 10 back, the far 22 and the far try line back, right? When you get back, almost immediately you will be split into pairs. One of those pairs will hit the tackle, have a tackle bag. The other person will be on the floor, get off the belly, hit the tackle bag, driving back for 3 steps, down, back up, hit again, repeat. You go all the way down the pitch, turn around, all the way back down the pitch the other way, and then you switch rounds. And a lot of people go, well, but holding the tackle bag is easy. No, because you've got to resist. When you're blowing out your ass, you've got to resist this person pushing you and not get carried, because you will get sent back to the start if you look like you're giving somebody it too easy. Yeah. And then you get through that, and then they do 400-meter sprints around the pitch. Everybody has to do it in under a minute. If anybody fails it, including the props, which, by the way, they always did, and then you eventually gave up. Like the backs did the first one. Oh, okay, we're done. Yeah, but, and again, no disrespect, Russ at the back here isn't going to do it. So we're all doing it again.
Yeah.
And like, as if they thought at what point that all of a sudden poor Russ is going to get quicker. Like, it's the 5th round, all of a sudden he unleashes this inner speed. The guy's a prop. Like there's no chance. But the whole point was just to not let the backs get off easy.
Yeah.
And you know, it was unbelievable hard. And then we finished with ball drills when you're tired. And the whole point of that is that the ball drills are easy. Like that was your cool down.
Yeah.
But if you can hold, catch, and throw a pass when you're that fatigued, you're going to be able to do it in the 75th minute of a game.
Exactly.
And that was, yeah.
That's what it's all about. We're so quick to just label endurance as long distance, low intensity, when it's not. Like you can be working endurance in what seems like the highest intensity absolutely possible. And that's where different realms of endurance come from. And we can talk about that another day, you know. But my God, yeah. That still gives me nightmares. Like I can feel it now. I'm sat here and I can feel lactate building up on my legs, thinking about those 400 meters.
Should give it a go in June when I'm back to see how well this goes.
It makes you want to go and do
it. Should we film this in June?
Let's do
and
it.
Put it on YouTube.
Let's do it.
So my last one, and then I'll tell you my comic bonus one, which actually isn't that. Well, it is actually quite hard, but not in the same level. But it was different. It was horrible for another reason. So my hard one first. So there's a little story behind this. So cast your mind back to the days of early fitness industry where personal training was still in its infancy and you were just starting to get your first few educators to the point where there was almost celebrity status in these people, right? Like now, like everyone has a mentorship program. I was chatting to Pat Davidson yesterday about everyone having a mentorship program, including me now. And unfortunately, I've missed the celebrity status bandwagon. But as I said on our 2022 review, I'm going to get chatting to Chris Baven and try and get on television. But at this time is when Phil Leaney, everyone sort of looked up to Phil because he's one of the few. And I had met Phil at this point. Obviously, I know Phil now. But he put up on his Facebook page, he went, I'm in Birmingham for 24 hours. Does anyone want to train at Ultimate Fitness? I live around the corner. So I thought, almost like I want a chance to meet Phil. I'll say, I will, no problem. And I assumed I'd get ignored. He'd go with one of his mates. Like, it wasn't meant for me, right? It was meant for an actual mate of him, not just someone that followed his page. And I was surprised when he went, all right, 11 o'clock, see you there. And I'm like, this is so cool. So I went in. It was me, Phil, and a guy called Cy Phantom who owns Ultimate Fitness. And we did this. And you've known now from working with Phil and Barry. And I'm presuming Phil had got this from Barry Pitts, right? Because Barry likes his high-volume leg workouts. We did a high-volume leg workout. And if I remember correctly, I don't know if this was actually the workout he had on paper or he was like, I'll show this kid who wants to come and train me without knowing me. I don't know if he was trying to show me up. But I hung with them through pure stubbornness and not wanting to lose. I think they were quite impressed at the end, right? But we did 3 sets of 50 leg extensions, double drop set at the end, 3 sets of 25 leg press with a quadruple drop set where it started with them sitting on it, and then Phil jumps off, and Cy jumps off, and then they were pulling weight off, and then he had an isometric hold on the halfway point with the weight, but also then pushing down on it, and then however many more reps I could do to failure, and then 3 sets of 25 hack squats with a triple drop set and an isometric hold, and then 3 more sets of 50 leg extensions, and then 5 sets of 25 bodyweight walking lunges. And I remember this because Cy was needing smelling salts to keep him going. And Cy is a bodybuilder. Cy is a very, 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 very strong, great shape guy. And he just wasn't used to the volume.
Yeah.
And I was more used to the volume, and it's the reason why it was the worst workout I'd ever done to this day. But the reason why I could handle that side of it, but I struggle with the muscular side of it. And I've never had DOMs like it. I couldn't even move an inch to get to the toilet. Every time I crossed the road, I had cars honking at me because I buckled with my hamstrings. It was terrible. But thank you, Phil. I will say that on air.
That's phenomenal. But if you look back for everything we've said there, not every single one of those workouts is high volume. It'd be so easy to just go, well, the toughest workouts in the world would be high volume, but not necessarily at all. Especially in terms of like those, like the Wingate sprint, for example. It's also worth remembering that, yeah, like you said it perfectly, that the tough becomes situation dependent as well. So don't automatically think, and this is the issue I have with everyone just automatically goes, right, volume, with no purpose behind it. They just do. extended peripheral heart action beyond what anyone could really adapt from or recover from. And it's not, okay, it's hard, but it's not tough.
Yeah. It's not, And so my bonus silly one that I reminded of halfway through. So I was at university. For people who don't know, my backstory, I studied sport and exercise science at Aberystwyth University. And my dissertation was a sort of Wingate sprint. This wasn't a hard workout, but mine was like a 10 sets of 10 seconds with 60 seconds rest in between. Wingate sprint. And I was testing the effects of creatine monohydrate on intermittent sports, because a lot of it on power, there's a lot of it on like endurance stuff, but very little on like rugby, football. Is creatine worthwhile? So I did some of them, and then I had a lot of things were going against me. The bike broke on some of their trials, so I lost a lot of sample sizes, lost a lot of the participants, and then my uncle passed away this is not a sad sob story. My uncle passed away in that year, so I had got an extension, and the extension means I had to do it whilst everyone was on the Easter holidays to get it done, which means a lot of the people I originally had earmarked to go on to be part of my study were now not here. They'd gone home. It's in the family. So I was like, I need a sample size that's passable to get my dissertation. It was still small, but I had to get a sort of a minimum threshold to have any abstract whatsoever. So we started doing favors with the other people who were doing extensions. So like, I'll take part in your study if you take part in mine, this sort of thing. So I took part in this study, and the study was the effects of a carbohydrate mouthwash drink on exercise to exhaustion time in the heat. So it wasn't a drink. I got a carbohydrate mouthwash. So I had to spit it out every 15 minutes one time, and I had a water mouthwash the other time. So I did it twice. So I had to do 2 cycles, like slow, long, steady duration stuff to complete exhaustion. So I couldn't cycle anymore on a Wingate. And I had to do that, which is hard in itself, right? I had to do that in a humidity chamber at like Sahara Desert levels of heat. So that's really horrible. That is a horrible workout. However, I was like, I came in the first day. I'm like, cool. So what are we actually measuring here? So the time to exhaustion was one of those things. The next thing was blood glucose. So how much did actually the mouthwash drink affect your blood glucose? So I had to, every 15 minutes, I had to briefly stop to take a pinprick, so I had a hole in every finger by the end of it, to get my blood drawn. And then all of a sudden, he says, and we were going to measure core temperature to see how much you heated up. I went, and how the fuck are you measuring that? And he hands me this thermometer. And I'm like, and I'm assuming that's not going in my mouth. So I'm in a humidity chamber, getting injections every 15 minutes in Sahara Desert heat, cycling to exhaustion with a thermometer up my backside. And if anyone's ever gotten a Wingate, they'll know the seats aren't that comfortable as it is. Yeah. That's the moment where I knew for certain that I'd never be gay.
Are you sure it was legit? This geezer just wanted a caretaker or something like that just happened to be there in the Easter holidays. And
I did wonder why he insisted put the thermometer up there himself.
Oh my god! Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Mate, great. Yeah, fair. Good study. Super interesting, but just not very pleasant to do.
No. I'm sure there's better ways of doing that now. I hope.
Bless him though. He had an extension for extenuating circumstances, and he ended up being a participant in his own study, so he did it himself.
Of course he did.
He loved it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. So on that note, as he said, if anyone wants to try these workouts and they're in not the thermometer one, and they're in London or Hong Kong, come and see us, and we'll make sure we get you to do them properly. And we'll say this now. When I come back in June, let's do a couple of the sprint ones and film it.
Yeah, hell yeah, 100%.